Tonight, if you go camping, you might sleep inside an RV with a locked door, a soft mattress, a fridge full of snacks, a heater, a phone charger, and maybe even a tiny bathroom that somehow still feels too small. You might complain because the Wi Fi is weak. You might get annoyed because someone forgot the good pillows. You might hear something rustling outside and immediately pretend you are not scared while quietly asking, "Did anyone else hear that?" Then you unzip the curtain, shine a flashlight through the window, and tell yourself it was probably just a raccoon making suspicious life choices near the cooler. And even then, with metal walls around you, a car key nearby, and emergency snacks within arm's reach, the darkness outside still feels different. It feels like something could be watching. Now, take away the RV, take away the locked door, the flashlight, the phone, the heater, the cooler, the clean blanket, and the ability to drive away if the night starts feeling a little too National Geographic. That was the ancient human problem. When something moved outside the camp, they could not roll up the window and say, "This campsite has terrible reviews." They had to listen. Because somewhere beyond the darkness, a big cat could be watching from the grass. A hyena could be circling the edge of the group. A pack of wild dogs could be waiting for one tired person to walk just a little too far. For most of human history, we were not only hunters, sometimes we were very much on the menu. So, how did ancient humans survive predators at night? Not because we were stronger, not because we were fearless, and not simply because we had fire. Ancient humans survived because they became the one thing predators hate most. They were not worth the trouble. A predator does not want a fair fight. A predator wants a meal that is easy, isolated, and predictable. Ancient humans became the opposite. They slept close together. They chose difficult places to approach. They made noise at the right moments. They kept weapons nearby. They learned how predators moved, and they turned fear into information. That last part matters. Fear gets a bad reputation today, mostly because we experience it during emails, bills, and mysterious sounds from the kitchen at 2 a.m. But in the ancient world, fear was not weakness. Fear was the alarm system. The humans who heard a strange noise and said, "Relax, it is probably nothing," did not always get to enjoy being correct. The ones who woke everyone up, grabbed something sharp, and looked extremely unpleasant to attack had better odds. At night, our weaknesses became obvious. We could not see well in darkness. We could not smell danger from far away. We could not sprint faster than a big cat. A human body is excellent for endurance, throwing, planning, tool making, and complaining about the weather. But against teeth in the dark, one human alone was not very impressive. That is why ancient humans did not survive by acting like heroes. They survived by refusing to be easy prey. The first way humans became harder to hunt happened before night arrived. They chose where darkness would find them. That choice mattered because predators love opportunity. A bad sleeping place could make humans easy to approach, too close to a watering hole, and predators might pass through during their own evening plans. Too deep in thick cover, and something dangerous could get close before anyone noticed. Too exposed, and danger could approach from every direction like nature had planned a terrible surprise party. So ancient humans learned to read landscapes carefully. A rock wall behind the group meant fewer directions to defend. A raised area could make movement easier to notice. An open space around the camp could reveal approaching animals. A narrow entrance could force danger to come from one direction. This was not camping in the modern sense. Nobody was choosing a nice view for breakfast photos. They were choosing a place where a predator would have to think twice. Humans were not making themselves invincible. They were making themselves inconvenient. And inconvenience matters when a predator is deciding whether a meal is worth the risk. The second defense was the group itself. A lone human at night is vulnerable. A group of humans is a completely different problem. Predators often look for isolated targets because isolation reduces risk. One animal separated from the herd is easier to attack than the whole herd. Humans learned that lesson deeply. They stayed close, they slept near one another. Children were kept inside the safest part of the group, while adults positioned themselves where danger was more likely to appear. This meant an animal approaching the camp was not attacking one sleeping body. It was risking a reaction from many bodies at once. One person might wake, then another person might wake, and suddenly several people are shouting, grabbing weapons, and ruining the predator's peaceful evening. That is the power of group defense. Humans were not dangerous because each individual was unbeatable. Humans were dangerous because one frightened person could become 10 frightening people very quickly. From a predator's point of view, that is a terrible deal. The meal has started yelling, the meal has friends, and the meal appears to be holding sticks. Suddenly, dinner is looking complicated. Sleep itself may have helped more than we realize. Not everyone sleeps in the same way. Some people naturally stay awake later, some wake earlier, and some sleep lightly enough to notice tiny changes. In a modern house, that person can be annoying. In an ancient camp, that person might save everyone. If the whole group slept deeply at the same time, the night would become extremely dangerous. But if sleep was uneven, the camp was less likely to be completely helpless. Someone might be awake because they were restless. Someone might be feeding a child. Someone older might be sleeping lightly. Someone might wake because the insects suddenly stopped making noise. That last detail matters. Nature often gives warnings before danger appears. Small animals go quiet. Birds react. The normal sound of a place suddenly becomes wrong. Ancient humans had to notice things most of us would miss. Their survival depended on reading the night like a page covered in tiny clues. The darkness was not empty. It was full of information, but only for people trained to listen. Now imagine something actually approaches. At first, nobody sees it clearly. There is only a sound beyond the safe area, a slow footstep, a low growl, a movement that does not match the wind. Someone wakes and listens. Another person notices the change. A hand reaches for a spear. Someone calls out into the darkness. Then more voices join. This is where humans became especially annoying to predators. We are loud, social, and surprisingly good at becoming a problem together. A single shout may not stop a predator, but a group shouting together sends a different message. It says the attack has been noticed. It says the target is not alone. It says surprise has failed. And surprise is everything. Many predators depend on getting close before the prey can react. Once the whole camp is awake, the predator's advantage shrinks. Now the humans can throw stones, thrust spears, wave branches, and create what is basically a loud committee with weapons. A predator wants food. It does not want a confusing meeting with 10 screaming apes holding sharp objects. This is where weapons change the balance. Humans did not need to overpower a lion, hyena, leopard, or bear with bare hands. That would have been a short and deeply unfortunate experiment. They needed distance. A spear gave them distance. A thrown stone gave them reach. A club gave them impact. A burning branch could create hesitation, but it was only one part of the system. Fire helped, but it was not the whole answer. The larger message was more important. These animals are not easy prey. Predators are powerful, but injury is expensive. A damaged eye, broken tooth, burned paw, or deep wound could become a death sentence for an animal that depends on hunting. So if humans looked risky enough, many predators had a reason to leave. Survival did not always require winning a fight. Sometimes it only required convincing danger to choose something easier. Shelter added another layer, but it was not always simple. A cave sounds safe until you remember that other animals also enjoy not being rained on. Hyenas, bears, big cats, and other predators could use the same shelters humans wanted. So ancient humans could not just walk into a cave and say, "Perfect, 2 bedrooms and a lovely view." They had to inspect it. Tracks near the entrance mattered. Smell mattered. Old bones mattered. Scratches on stone mattered. A shelter was useful only if it did not already belong to something with much bigger teeth. This means ancient humans survived by understanding the habits of other animals. They learned where predators traveled. They learned which places were dangerous. They learned when to avoid a cave, when to defend one, and when to leave before night made leaving harder. The best victory was not fighting a predator. The best victory was choosing a place where the attack never happened. Then there was memory. Every dangerous night taught something: where the hyenas came from, which sounds mattered, which shelter was unsafe, which mistake nearly killed someone. But memory becomes fragile if it stays inside one person. So humans turned warnings into stories. A story can carry fear across generations. Do not go beyond the safe area. Do not sleep near that place. Do not ignore silence in the trees. Do not wander alone because something waits outside the group. To modern ears, stories about monsters and night spirits may sound like imagination, but some of them may have carried practical warnings. The monster made the rule memorable. A child may forget a simple instruction. A child is less likely to forget a terrifying story about what happens beyond the camp. That is not bad parenting by ancient standards. That is prehistoric health and safety training with better branding. Even today, we still carry traces of this ancient world. Sit outside at night, and your body understands something before your mind does. A sudden noise turns your head. A shape beyond the light grabs your attention. A silence that feels too complete makes you uneasy. You may know there is probably nothing dangerous there. Your body still files a complaint. That reaction is old, older than cities, farming, and writing. It comes from ancestors who survived because they did not treat darkness as empty. They treated it as a place where information was harder to gather and mistakes were more expensive. That is why fear of the dark feels so deep. It was never only imagination. For ancient humans, darkness really did change the rules. By morning, the world became readable again. Shapes became trees, sounds had sources, tracks appeared in the ground. The group could see what had passed nearby during the night. Maybe there were paw prints at the edge of camp. Maybe something had circled and left. Maybe the humans never saw the danger clearly, but survived because the danger decided they were not worth the risk. That was the real achievement. Ancient humans did not survive predators at night by becoming the strongest animal in the darkness. They survived by becoming the most irritating prey imaginable. They grouped together. They chose defensive places. They listened carefully. They slept unevenly. They used weapons and warning calls. They learned animal behavior. They passed down fear as memory. And when necessary, they made enough noise to convince a predator that dinner could find itself somewhere else. Humans did not conquer the night in one brilliant moment. They made the night harder to hunt them in. And over thousands of generations, that was enough. Ancient humans survived because they were not easy, silent, lonely prey. They were watchful, noisy, armed, social, and extremely annoying. And sometimes being annoying is exactly what keeps you alive.